Okay, cool. Now let's go to today's agenda. So we have a couple of introductions. I'm going to introduce myself and the other speakers. Then we have a session about MuleSoft Catalyst, which will be given by Johannes. I'll let Johannes and Sean give their own introductions during their own sessions. Then we have Anypoint Service Mesh by Sean, followed by a Q&A. So this will be a generic Q&A. You can ask any question related to MuleSoft, any design, architecture, implementation, development, any kind of questions you want. At the end, we have an interactive quiz session. So we have organized a quiz questionnaire. So there will be 5 or 6 questions. Everybody can participate. And the winners, the top 3 winners, will get MuleSoft training and certification vouchers from us. Okay. And then we have picture time, and then we wrap up the event. Yes, for the questions from the presentation topics, Santosh, you can just wait till the end of the session, because we have a quite time-boxed session. So MuleSoft Catalyst and Service Mesh, we have 15 minutes for MuleSoft, 20 minutes for MuleSoft Catalyst, and 15 minutes for Service Mesh. So just keep your questions till the end. At the end, we will have some questions there. Okay, so the trivia quiz questions will be available at the end of the meetup. Yes, okay. Cool. So yeah, so to start off with, let me introduce myself. So I'm the organizer. I'm going to be your host for this meetup. My name is Chinmay Sahu, and I'm based in Munich, Germany. I'm a senior technical consultant with MuleSoft, and I've been associated with MuleSoft since 2017, working on different integrations, integration patterns, design, and different use cases. Anything related to design, architecture, and best practices. And so I'm a meetup leader in Munich, and we also have Ganesh as well. So Ganesh is going to be the so Ganesh, if you could just give your brief introduction.
Yeah, sure, Chinmay. So hi guys, I'm Ganesh, and I have around 10 years of experience, and have been with MuleSoft since 2015. So I'm currently working as a senior technical consultant, and I have a few background about quite a big background about the integration and with different platforms. So I think this is my first meetup as a leader. So I'm also looking forward, as like you, to get more info and experience from this meetup. So welcome all, and we'll have a great meetup, and we have the quiz at the end for the certification and vouchers for users. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry guys, I thought I was sharing my screen, but I hope you guys can see my screen. Can you give a thumbs up or just say yes in the chat?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, so to start off with, so let's go to jump into our first topic, which is MuleSoft Catalyst. And to give you a demonstration about what it is, we have Johannes here. So Johannes, it's up to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You can share your screen and you can present for the next 25 minutes. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chinmay. So also, please thumbs up in the chat or a quick yes that you can see my screen. Okay, perfect, thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, who I haven't come across with yet, my name is Johannes Herr. I'm part of the German services practice, and I'm a engagement manager. And today I would like to give you a quick overview over MuleSoft Catalyst. And before we start, just a quick run through the agenda. So first of all, I would, for those of you who don't know it yet, give a quick
Johannes, can you unmute yourself?
so sorry. Yeah, is it better?
Yes,
I don't know
yes.
I don't know how that happened. Sorry.
No
All
worries.
right. Okay, let's go back. So when did I drop off?
So you are explaining what I think you are giving your introduction and then starting off with the Catalyst stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to explain to you what MuleSoft Catalyst is, and then we talk about the different paths that you need to go through, and also the different playbooks. Going to give you a quick introduction of what API-led connectivity is and how you use it and why it matters to the Catalyst. And then we talk about Center for Enablement and what it is, what it does, and what benefits we have. So for those of you who haven't seen it before, MuleSoft is of course, a technology company, but we also have our methodology, which is now called MuleSoft Catalyst. You might have heard it before as MuleSoft Outcome-Based Delivery. And before we go into Catalyst, maybe start with the name that we had before, Outcome-Based Delivery. What we want to achieve here is something that generates an outcome that you can use, that you can measure, that you can actually give feedback on and provide access to in your company. And now it has been transformed with a new name. It's called MuleSoft Catalyst now. And this also brings together our outcomes-driven methodology, assets, and also services. So on the one hand, we have our methodology, which is a step-by-step approach that guides you from the start to the end to the optimization or scaling of your Anypoint platform and the organizational part around it. Then you also have a variety of assets that over the years and over the course of over 1,800 projects, we generated, we optimized, we reviewed, and we got feedback on. And this is accessible. A number of assets is accessible for you, for someone who becomes a customer. They can reuse this to actually do their own Catalyst method. And if they don't want to, if they want to be guided, if they want to have consulting support, then there's also a services component. And the services component is a tailored approach, a 3-part of the Catalyst methodology is actually stripped down into a launch, a scale, and an optimize. And if we were in a sales setting here, I would talk more about what that actually means. But just focusing on the Catalyst part, it actually helps you to start to set up your business for success, for your digital transformation, and brings you to the, or guides you through the different steps that actually bring value. So, and before we dive into the methodology, I'm pretty sure everyone here has heard something about MuleSoft Anypoint platform and its different components. And then there is the methodology. And the methodology actually consists of 3 different core components. We have the business outcomes, we have technology delivery, we have organizational enablement. And in the middle, as you can see, we have the customer success. And the customer success here is our main priority because, as I already said before, we want to focus on bringing value to an organization of a customer. And now let's look into what that actually means, because these components have different tasks. And as I said in the beginning, they come with playbooks. So on the left side, you see the names that I mentioned before. We have business outcomes, technology delivery, and the organizational enablement part. And it's stripped down into different phases, if we want to say. So first of all, we want to start with the planning for success. And at a later point of time, we look into establishing the foundation. And then we go into building to scale and measuring the impact. The last 2 points are something for a customer that is already evolved, that already uses MuleSoft, is frequently implementing new use cases, etc. But the first one would be the launch, to set you up for success. So you start planning it, and then you establish the foundation. And then we have different playbooks. So there's 1 for business outcomes. There's 2 for technology delivery. we have the Anypoint platform playbook, and we have the project playbook. And I'm going to dive into this in a minute, what that actually means. And then we have the organizational enablement part. And the organizational enablement part, and as you can see, has the biggest amount of playbooks. And just as a side note here, we want to focus on enabling an organization of a customer. We want to train them. We want to give them a step-by-step procedure how to build up an internal support. And we want to build up a center for enablement. And what the center for enablement means, I'm going to go into more detail. But now let's have a look at what actually is behind each of these playbooks. So first, here, this is what a playbook looks. We have the title, we have the activities. Here, for example, the platform playbook would start with defining the Anypoint platform vision and roadmap. And then you have a step-by-step procedure afterwards, how to actually define that vision and define that roadmap. And then once you have completed these steps, you're going to proceed into the next phase in this section. So the next one will be design, Anypoint platform, architecture, and implementation plan. And here you have, again, another step-by-step procedure. And these steps even have sub-steps. So if you're in our platform, in our Catalyst Knowledge Hub, you will have access to these points, and then you can drill down on each of these tasks. So this is the overview for one example playbook. Let's look into a more high-level version, so what each and every playbook would contain. Here we have the detailed task list. So for example, if you look into business outcomes, if you were to be a customer, you will get a customer success manager. Customer success manager is someone who drives your success plan, who drives your business outcomes and defines KPIs and sets you up for a long-term success, even if professional services is not involved. And these are the steps. For example, here, if you start to be a customer, if you start to use Catalyst, then the first point would be to agree on business outcomes and KPIs. And then in the next step, develop an overall success plan. And this success plan should look at the current situation and the to-be situation. So where you want to be in the next months, years, and how long you ever want to plan it. And then you go look into the next playbooks, the technology delivery. And that's where you actually set up your platform for success. You start to look into the vision. As I said, you build up a architecture and implementation plan. And then once you have done that, you actually start looking into prioritizing your first projects, building up a backlog, staff and onboard your delivery teams. So again, there's a step-by-step procedure how to start on board and actually achieve a quick win for your first project. And if we now look into organizational enablement, you see that for the Center for Enablement part, you start establishing the C4. You start analyzing the integration capabilities of the organization you're in. And I'm going to go into that into more detail. But if you look at the internal support model, you actually set this up. You determine the operating model, how to approach someone if you have an incident, how to log a ticket, how to talk to people internally, how to get support on your application, on your platform, login, and server. And then what we also do, we train the teams. So as Chinmay mentioned, there will be a quiz in the end. You can win training vouchers and certification vouchers. And this is actually the core. If you haven't been there, MuleSoft, training.mulesoft.com is where we guide a customer, where we show them around. And there you can actually get for free trainings. You can also get public guided trainings if you want. And then it goes on. And this step-by-step procedure gives you the chance to actually see, get a look and feel and execute what MuleSoft sees as best practices. And as I said, this can be done completely by yourself or by someone who has done it before, professional services team, SIs, partners, whatsoever. And to now go a little bit more into detail, I would like to talk about the Center for Enablement. And as maybe some of you have already heard, the Center for Enablement is something that MuleSoft really wants to implement at a customer, because our focus is that the customer learns the steps, the procedure, the blueprint, and the values of what the Catalyst methodology is, and wants to really push this into an organization so that they can do everything by themselves. And this starts somewhere. How did we get there? And the question is, what current issue do we have nowadays facing all the different ideas people come up with, all the different applications or new providers, new services that are there somewhere in the world. But the first point that we have to look at is our delivery capacity. And this delivery capacity in our IT department is maybe 2 people, 3 people that have only 40 hours available in their week. And now a project team comes and approaches them with a new idea, with a new initiative, and says, I need to have this delivered in the next 3 weeks. And then another team comes and asks for support, asks for application support, or there's a new infrastructure that needs to be built. At some point, the delivery capacity is reached. There could be thousands of demands, but at some point the IT cannot support them. And these could be demands like I said, mobile applications, or a new cloud provider has been onboarded and needs to be set up. There's a new AI tool or other business demands, and we just cannot fill them. So now looking at what we actually could do is create a new operating model that creates a cycle of consumption. So at some point, central IT, someone in your line of business IT, produces a monitoring API template. And this monitoring API template will be shared on an internal or even external marketplace to be consumed in a self-service manner, or by receiving it or by pushing it to someone. And then your line of business IT or a project, your developers consume it. And afterwards, after they consumed it, they give you feedback. They say, okay, this monitoring API was great, but we made a little tweak here, we optimized it there, and then it gets sent back. The central IT checks it and sees, okay, they optimized it, and then it creates a cycle of consumption and optimization. And now you have this, of course, you start somewhere. So you have 5, 10 reusable assets that you share with your project teams. But after the first 5, 10, 12, 15 projects, you have a vast number of assets that you can now have available, and the next projects that actually consume them will be faster, will be more cost effective, and will just be more efficient. And how that looks like in our new operating model is a little bit different than the first time. So we still have the demands on our IT, but now with this new operating model, we have a few IT people that were made available that actually focus on enablement and creating assets, or feedbacking back to whoever used them, or refreshing them, updating them, you name it. And on top of this, we now have the whole, the gap that we had before closes, because we have now the consumption and the innovation that we can focus on, because our new project teams do not approach the IT, they approach the marketplace and consume the reusable assets that we already created. And now our IT department is not the bottleneck anymore, but they are now the driver and innovators for the digital transformation that is going on in the in your company. Now, if we look into what the key components are, we actually see that there's a number of things that need to happen. So on the one side, we have platform. On the other side, we have enablement. And the The platform key components here focus on platform architecture. We have deployment and management, and we have the support component. Whereas the enablement focuses on creating a API strategy, API best practices, and a delivery acceleration. So just to pick out a few, for example, here we have in the platform architecture, what our first step or steps should be is to create a reference architecture and a security architecture, for example, that everyone sticks to in the company. So if a new project team were to start a MuleSoft project, they need to stick to these provided architectures and need to build their whole project around this. And it goes through everything that is listed here. For example, if you build a standard document for how to build your platform and how to configure everything that you need before you can actually go productive, and so on and so forth. In the enablement part, it's the same thing. So we need to create something that is easily consumable. Someone in your organization wants to know what MuleSoft does and what the Center for Enablement does. So you need to define a vision, objectives, a mission that can be shared with your executive team, that can get you sponsorship, that can get you more exposure. And this is part of the enablement actually. And then you also need to align it to your IT strategy. And if we look into API best practices, it continues that you need to make sure that you actually do your communication, that you do your events, that you focus on spreading the word that something new, something that drives innovation, something that is something that brings value to your organization, has just emerged in your company. And therefore, we do evangelism events, we do communications, brown bags, something like this that actually exposes the C4E to your organization. And this is the beginning. And again, as similar to the Catalyst methodology, we do have steps and sub-steps. So there's a lot to overcome, but if you do this and if you stick to what is presented to you in this C4E playbook, you're actually going to be set up for success. And now just to look into what we discussed. So what is the C4E? C4E enables teams to get the maximum value out of API-led connectivity, your application network, and your whole IT operating model. So on the one hand, we have the platform that you want to standardize, that you want to define. You have enablement, where you set your colleagues up for success. Your organization gets to know the C4E. Then, how does it work? Again, it is like a silver lining. You have the enablement part, you have the platform part. You evangelize, you provide assets to your API consumers, and then the word gets spread. And this might look very big and very intensive in time, in resource consumption, but you can actually start easy. So someone who sponsors has the communication to the sponsor, and then 3 people who actually look into, okay, we have the platform, so we need a platform lead. We have the enablement, so we have an enablement lead. And then someone, and this person is not even necessary in the beginning, is focusing on the delivery part. And then everything comes together. It's a journey, definitely, and it starts somewhere. You need to create the first assets, but then in the end, it's actually going to be self-driving, because all your new projects, all your API consumers, all your asset consumers are actually going to provide you with feedback, with new assets that you can refine and provide, and then it just scales by its own. So to conclude, let's look at the benefits of the C4E. And as I said, it enables your cross-functional teams. It supports your onboarding of projects, the scalability, the efficiency. It reduces risk. It reduces cost. Why? Because you have standardized and optimized assets, processes that you can share and that you can reuse. And then it just accelerates your innovation, because the people who have been looking to start up a new project can actually start that project faster, can drive their innovations faster, and can focus on multiple things at the same time. That's it from my side. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat now, and have, yeah, and then I'm going to hand back to Chinmay.
Great, thanks, Johannes. It was really insightful. So the ground is up for question now for a couple of minutes, guys. If you have any questions, people who have presenter access can speak up, or else you can just type it on the chat.
Okay, first question, what are playbooks? Playbooks are the word for the step-by-step procedure, which has the tasks, which holds the tasks and the activities that you need to undergo to set up your platform. So if you look at this slide here, for example, you see, let me just zoom in a little bit. I can't, okay. You see this is the playbook here. You have your activities, you start on the left side and you finish on the right side. And then you have the step-by-step procedure that you need to do to actually sign off or tick each and every one of these activities to actually go to the next phase, to actually build something, accomplish something.
Can I add something to it, Johannes? It's Uli.
Sure.
Everyone who has an account on a MuleSoft platform, either it's a customer or partner platform, there is catalyst.mulesoft.com, where you should be able to access those playbooks.
Correct. Maybe Uli, you can type it in the chat for everyone to see.
Will do.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. So any more questions, guys, before we jump into the next topic? Johannes, you can stop sharing.
There was a direct question. For analyzing and setting the foundation, is this part of MuleSoft license or is it a payable service? So as Uli mentioned, you will have access to it if you have a MuleSoft account, so the Catalyst Knowledge Hub. And it either can be a service-led engagement or you can do it yourself. But of course, you would need to have Anypoint, however, licensed, or in a community edition that you want to do these steps. So otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. All right. Back to you, Chinmay.
Okay, thanks. Johannes, if you could stop sharing, I can.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So I think the next topic is going to be delivered by Sean. So Sean, I can see you're on mute. Yeah, if you could turn on your video as well. Yes, awesome.
Hi.
Hello. Yes, over to you.
Okay, very good, Jemaya. Thanks a lot. So Sean Rose, my name. I am a senior solution architect in the professional services group. I'm Irish, but I live in the south of Germany, so I'm based out of Munich when we have a Munich office, that is. Haven't been there for about 6 months, but that's where I am. So I'm a long background in integration technology stretching back over 20 years. And the most recent years, so at IBM, at Software AG, doing web methods, and now more recently at MuleSoft. And my main interests are, shall we say, cloud technologies in general, cloud integration technologies specifically, and then with a lot of focus now in the last months on the infrastructure aspect of cloud. Okay, so I think that will do to get us started. Then I would begin to present. So this is basically a presentation of, I'll try to keep it reasonably short and to the point, and we'll do a short demo afterwards. So what I do is, in fact, I did this at the start, so people may have not got this. I'm just going to type the link in the chat again. Here is a small demo app for you to just play with, just click your way through. And when we actually get around to the app, that's the endpoint. Okay, so it is just an ELB on an AWS cluster at the moment. So you can click through that. Allows you to buy some swag. The money goes to Chimaya. I'm joking. As I say, it's just a simple demo, and we'll talk about it in a few moments. So let's just jump in. Okay, and play from the start. Let's see. Oops. Share my screen helps, doesn't it? Yep. Here we go. There and there. And let me know when you can see that. Is that good? Chimay, you can see that?
Yes, we can. Yes,
the chart.
I can.
Great. Okie dokie, great. So getting started with Anypoint Service Mesh. Now, let's see how we ended up with something like Service Mesh. Back in the day, we used to have monolithic architectures, okay? So large blocks of code and big enterprise scale applications. What was the problem with them? They were brittle, they're hard to change, large blocks of code. Then you had to keep redeploying application after all the code changes. So that became a sort of bottleneck. It was not terribly agile. Again, a single language and required a lot of communication across teams. And so over the years, then these patterns changed and people began to look at things like SOA, and we began to look at things like microservices, where we say, let's decompose these monolithic applications into, so as you see here, a front end, a web experience, some blocks of functionality, order, inventory services, pricing services typically, and then some back end, so systems of record, SAP data, Salesforce data, this type of stuff. What were the advantages of that? It was actually easier to change smaller blocks of code than it was to change a large monolithic application. It's much more nimble. The services themselves operate independently of one another, so you could swap out the code in a, an order service or something like that without, having to impact the rest of the application. And it allowed for a more sort of polyglot programming model. So you weren't saying everybody has to program in Java, everybody has to program in C++, whatever it was. The teams could work independently according to their capabilities, according to the type of programming language they favor, the ones that made sense for the type of task they were trying to perform. Okay, so that sounded great. And so basically we said then choosing microservices is basically the easy part of all of this. It seems like a no-brainer. Say if we decompose something that's very complex and make it into simpler, smaller units, the way Mule now does API-led, all of these things. What we found, however, was that in this context, the complexity was not always really reduced. It was only reduced at the scale of the service or the application. But it's like saying the difference between having a block of granite and a bag of marbles. You've got a lot of small things that you need to then think about. You get a different kind of complexity. So what sort of complexity did you get? You've got the requirements for secure inter-service communication. So I've got all these guys in here saying how do they talk to each other? What type of patterns do they use? Who's allowed to talk to who? All of the sort of good security aspects and traffic control, fault tolerance. What happens if this guy here is not available? Will it fail over to something else? So a lot of different problems, managing and monitoring. How will I get information about what's going on in here? Okay. And so at the end of the day, as I say, we found that the complexity itself ended up not really being reduced all that much. And so the end of it was that in the early days of microservices, developers began to just program these type of capabilities into the service itself. Okay, so that was just the way you had to do it, because you had to be able to do these things in terms of service. You had to be able to do routing. You had to make the service discoverable. Things like circuit breaker patterns, tracing, configuration. But again, this is you know, it's writing that complexity into what should be a basically simple functional service. And so, how can we make microservices more, shall we say, resilient? And here is the fundamental problem statement. We have too much infrastructure in the business logic of the service. And so what did we do? So then people said, okay, let's start taking this stuff here out of the service and putting it into a platform which will then manage these infrastructural aspects, management aspects, routing aspects. However, again, we have this idea of you know, smart endpoints and dumb pipes. It didn't really work, because if you end up and say I have to apply things like a policy to every service individually, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. You're ending up, you say, you're just building the complexity into these smaller units, and each service you have to build that in. So what did we do? We said, okay, well, it probably makes sense, since policies, the type of policies that you apply tend to be generic and applicable for all services. So you do things like we say, okay, well, let's try to find a central point of management for policy application. And this gave rise then to products, and the product that we use as the service mesh in our context today is basically Istio became the kind of de facto industry standard for microservices. Yeah. And so here is the statement. What is a service mesh? Service mesh itself is actually an architectural pattern rather than a product for microservices deployments. And its primary goal is, as stated here, to make service-to-service communication fast, secure, and reliable. So these things I just discussed, where I said initially we programmed all of that into the services. And we actually, the pattern that established itself very quickly was that these things then became very much a kind of a Kubernetes technology, because Kubernetes itself offered control of ingress, control of access. So what we did was we said the pattern that actually established itself relatively quickly is what I'm calling a sidecar proxy. And the sidecar proxy is a pattern which is a type of very simple reverse proxy service that allows east-west communication. East-west is this direction. So to allow a Node.js service, a Python service, a Java service to talk to each other within the context of the cluster, in the context of the namespace. And we find another way then to approach the north-south traffic. We'll look at that in just a moment. So imagine we put a control plane on that. So in the context of the Anypoint platform, suppose we've got this and we can begin to hang this into the capabilities that Anypoint as a platform brings in terms of management of, you know, policies, management of APIs, then that seems like a pretty smart solution. So what we're doing now is we're effectively saying we're going to tie the control plane at the level of the Kubernetes environment, the microservice environment, into the API management solution in terms of the API gateway, in terms of the security. So what role does API management play? API gateways are protecting north-south traffic for any externally discoverable service. So the classic things that you API management in a regular Mule Anypoint environment, saying we can do client ID enforcement, make the services discoverable and reusable. So the good API story in terms of exchange, in terms of API management, and discover, manage, and secure any service in a single unified platform, whether it's a Mule service or a microservice written in another language and using a traditional sort of microservice pattern. Okay, I continue. Now, so here is what Anypoint service mesh actually is. It's a combination of the traditional Mule Anypoint environment, whether these are traditional Mule workers and Mule apps running on Cloud Hub, runtime fabric, so more dynamic infrastructure approach, runtime fabric apps running in a fabric, and combine that with a set of microservices using our proxy, using our Envoy proxy. So my Python service, my Node.js service, using a technology up to now from Istio, which had been called Mixer. And the Mixer actually talks to a Mule adapter, which then allows this to bind into the control plane, into the platform. Now, I say this advisedly because Mixer is deprecated and will vanish from Istio in the next release. And so we are already as I speak these days, we're about to bring out a new mixerless version of Anypoint Service Mesh. So any of you beginning to look at this technology, skip the 1.0 release and go straight to the 1.1, which will then have these services talk directly. So Mule Adapter itself will take over the role that Mixer had performed and bind us into the control plane directly. Okay, so the 1.1 release will get rid of Mixer. Okay, so the product architecture itself is standard Mule architecture plus, and this is what I'd said at the beginning with regard to the way microservice architecture was essentially from the beginning a type of Kubernetes architectures. Kubernetes brought these qualities of service to the table, saying I can actually protect, I can manage ingress. I've got an API server on the front side of my Kubernetes controller, and so we're basically supporting three main flavors: Amazon EKS, so Kubernetes, Amazon Kubernetes service on AWS, Google Kubernetes that's native to Google, of course, and then Azure Kubernetes services. So you can fly your Istio and your mesh or your microservice environment on any of these three products. Is the state of things today. Okay, so here is the details of how this then actually works. So somebody calls in from a client. This is the link I just sent you before. Say, here's a web application, someone's calling in. It first of all calls into the envoy of the microservice, and I'll be showing you that in a moment in the demo. This envoy passes this along to Mixer and to the Mule adapter. The adapter gets the relevant policies and contracts that apply to this microservice. So we're saying we wanted to have client ID, we want to have client ID enforcement. Then it gets that from the API management solution in the platform and brings this back. So this is number 4, goes back through, as I say, Mixer will disappear, and this will just simply be going directly from the adapter back to the envoy and into the microservice. And finally, what we're doing is saying the policies that apply are then used to say, now the final step, you can actually then talk to the microservice in terms of the SLA policies that apply, the security policies that apply. That's so 1 through 6, that is basically the current interaction pattern, flow pattern of how these things work. Okay. So now let's talk about the adapter. So basically what we're doing is we're creating as a CRD, it's called Component Resource Definition, a Mule adapter which hooks into the microservices environment and allows policy exchange, and it allows the analytics of the service we will look at that again in the demo to be passed back out to the control plane and say, I can visualize that in terms of my API analytics. Now, the general principle is we use one adapter per namespace. So namespaces in Kubernetes are then used for simply dividing applications, dividing organizations. So you would generally use an adapter per namespace. Or if you have to, and here's the point, adapters come in 3 sizes. So this is going to be, as you can clearly see, a Mule worker, and there's a Mule running there underneath, so that a small adapter would have half of a virtual core and would be capable of managing in terms of the traffic in and out, policy calls and analytics out, a limit of about 25 APIs. Okay, a medium adapter would have a single vCore and have an API limit of about 50. And a large adapter would have 2 cores and would have a limit of about 100. Say the principle is 1 adapter per namespace. Okay, and namespaces are intended, and this is what it says here, for use in environments with many users, many teams, or projects. So saying basically you get your dedicated namespace in terms of your microservices environment, use an adapter with that name or that will indicate that environment clearly, and hook yourself then into the control plane by using the adapter. Okay. So the management capabilities that we bring is that we're allowed then, we use the API management solution of Anypoint to apply these API policies. Okay, so basic authentication, client ID enforcement, rate limiting, the usual things that you probably all know from API management and API administration as we stand today. Now, one of the discussion points that keeps coming up is, yeah, but you know, Istio can do that as well. Yeah, it can do it for a microservice environment, but it cannot do it for a Mule environment. And so basically what we're doing here is we're combining the capabilities for API policy management of microservices and of Mule environments combined in a single control plane fronting the platform. Okay. So we're also maximizing adoption. And as soon as I have deployed an API from my microservices environment, it's putting the assets then into Exchange with the good Exchange story that we all know, saying reuse, and here's the asset discoverable and all those good things. Okay. And finally, then we have the point where we're saying this will allow me then to monitor my multi-cloud environment. So my EKS cluster, my Kubernetes cluster, plus my regular Mule API monitoring and API analytics. So the good API monitoring story that we have there. Okay, so we're pretty much here ready to take a look now at the demo. Let me just go out of the presentation for a moment and see where we stand. This may have given rise to a few questions. I wonder, do we want to answer questions now? Jemaya, I would leave that up to you. If not, we can save the questions for the end.
Yeah, so maybe if someone has a few questions, we can take 2 questions now. And then we see the demo, and it will make things more clear what Sean was speaking about. And then we take the next questions. Sounds good. So guys, if you have any questions, we can take 2 questions right now, or we do it after the demo.
Okay, apparently not. So fair enough. Then let me share this with you. So basically, as I said, I fired this thing up on an AWS EKS cluster, which is basically here. You can, Jemai, you can see that again, I guess.
Yes.
Can you see? Can you? Okay. So I'm going to go through this very quickly just to show you what the infrastructure I described in the charts up to now. Then to say, okay, this is what you actually get. So it's basically you need to be a little careful about the versions. There are also some, so we support at this point Kubernetes 1.16. Moving forward with the 1.1 release, we'll be supporting Kubernetes 1.17. There are some things around versioning that you need to watch out for. Read the documentation, it's all in there. The second point is setting up an EKS cluster is not a trivial task unless you use this. So I'll put this today just so I can put that in the chat for those of you who don't know it. EKS-CTL is basically a command line interface for interacting, or mainly for creating Kubernetes clusters on AWS. So it sits on your AWS CLI. It's basically a very simple way of saying you can literally do EKS-CTL, create cluster, -- version, and it actually gives you the correct version that you need. So be careful with the, as I say, with the versions. I can also, if somebody is interested, explain to you how you can do this on Minikube. Minikube means that you could actually fire this up on your own laptop, but be aware that you'll be doing something like trying to emulate an 8 CPU cluster on a virtual box on your laptop. You need a bit of patience. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing is then that you install. So reading the installation documentation, you install Istio. We support at this point in time the version 1.6.8, and then you're pretty much ready to go. Now, here is what I have done. Let me just clear this again. Okay, now I have got an application which is called Mythical Demo. So any of you who clicked on the link earlier will have seen what the application basically is. If I do kubectl get pods services namespace equals mythical payment. Thinking about it. Okay, so what I basically did when I deployed this application was it created a set of 4 pods plus a web front end that are these guys running here. It created a set of services for those pods, okay, with the UI service itself on the load balancer on the ELB. That's what you basically call when you go in that point, okay. So there are 2 ways of doing this. One is to say I actually use the command line interface, which is ASM-CTL. Again, I'll clear that. So if I do history, you see all of these things that I've actually done, used it for. So what I'm basically doing then is I say, once I've actually got these services and these application services deployed on my EKS cluster, and as I say, they're deployed by means of a component resource definition. Okay, so if I go in here, for example, do ls, I'll show you what these guys look like. So here, for example, is a resource definition. So I decide I need to make an API for the customer service. Okay, so if I do here, API customer.yaml, here is what a CRD looks like. This is how I actually specify an API as a component resource definition and deploy this to then to my Kubernetes my Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so you see I've got things like the environment ID, so my GAV and stuff like this. Where am I actually going to put this? And if I look at the second thing I need to do is we said we need to actually bind this to the environment. So we need to say I need to create a I need then to create a binding for each API to bind this into my platform. Okay, so let me see. Let's see if I do cube CTL. I just want to look at this stuff. Okay. Okay. Bloop. CTL API. Okay, so what I basically did was I deployed each of these APIs and then created a binding for each of the APIs. This is like a web service binding. So it's how do I actually bind this to the into the service that it's actually going to be called by the API. If I do API binding list, I've created each of the 4 services. So for my customer service, my inventory service, my order service, and my payment service, I have bound those into the control plane. Okay. So before that, of course, what I forgot to mention, as I said, I created an adapter, and the adapter is basically then the thing that's applying the communication, the policy checks, and putting the analytics information out to the control plane. What I get at the end of all this is once I'm actually bound, and you see itself, it then says that the service itself is ready, so the deployment worked. The binding is ready, so that it's then in status ready. And once I've actually got that, I can then see that I've got the microservice then. So these are actually Spring Boot. It's a Spring Boot application, set of Spring Boot services, and they are bound through this created API, the resource definition, and the binding for the service into my API management and into the platform. Okay, so you can see those are actually active now. I can go and actually look at this and see it automatically detects that this is not a Mule application. This is a non-Mule application, which is actually being managed by Service Mesh. Okay. So the next point, as we said, was that this would actually put these assets then into Exchange. So having deployed them, so you can see here are the payment API, the inventory API, orders API, customers API. You see it's actually put these as HTTP APIs and the whole sort of versioning stuff. And we'll look at that in just a moment as well, see how can I actually change this, how can I actually update it, okay? That's that. And finally, then in terms of monitoring, I can do the things that I already know from my regular. It doesn't make any difference now at this point because I've defined the API, I've deployed it, it's in Exchange, it's in API Manager, and I can then just go and look and say, okay, show me the number of calls. So these are where I ask people to test these things today, okay? And here you go, you can see people have been playing around, just sort of clicking their way through that with the good things that you know. So there have been 16 calls, each of them returned a successful. We had a couple of 401s, and I'll explain that in just a moment as well. So these things are now available. The microservice is basically available within. Let me just click through it once for you to show you what it actually is. So I say this is a good old Swag application.
Sean, can we have this in the chat so that everyone in the group can also place an order for a t-shirt?
Yeah, sure.
Then we see the monitoring.
Of course, I think I put in the chat about 7 times at this stage. Okay, here you go again. So everybody wants to play with that. There you go. That, as I say, is basically the ELB. That is the UI service of this Spring Boot application is bound to that endpoint, and that's what allows you to then sort of call it. And that's where we say I can see then the API calls. Okay. So. Okay, I'm just looking at the comments. I'll come back to that in a minute. Yeah, congratulations that you can do that without the extra infra, but you can't do it for you know, the whole sort of added value of the control plane of Anypoint plus Exchange and those things you don't have. This is why I'm saying this is not an attempt to sort of replicate Istio capabilities or microservice capabilities. This is something where I say I bring these together. I say I've got the capability of doing this for both Mule and non-Mule. Okay. So these are the servers. Then I add to cart, to checkout, continue, authorize payment, and place order. So there you go. Basically, this has just then called through the 4 or 5 services, and I think that's what the application does. So let's go back here for a second, and I would go in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to update these guys now by just saying, okay, let's take the let me just delete the binding. So in that moment where I've deleted the bindings, I'm now okay. People are playing with the app. Let's not play with it for a moment until I've walked through this and we've done this, and then we can and we can see. So if I do API binding delete, okay, so it's now deleted this binding. I do this then for order. I do this for inventory. And so just while I'm doing this, the point for the person who wrote, the stuff about needing extra infra, this is the clear positioning of this product is this is for customers who already have a sort of a working Mule environment and are looking to add microservice style integration capabilities and API to that environment, and not say here I have a microservice environment that works and now I need to add extra infrastructure to do something that Istio can already do. That's not the plan. That's not the way this works. So what I've done, I got rid of inventory, I got rid of order, I got rid of customer. I just need to get rid of payment. And okay, so I've now deleted all the bindings. If I go back in there and do API binding list, I've got no bindings. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to update the API. I'm not going to change the service implementation, that sort of thing, but just to say, okay, we want to put a new version in there. So let me just go and do BI, API, say customer, YAML. Oh, that's the wrong one. There's an error there, customers. Okay. So let's bump this guy up to 3. So imagine you've made a change. Now I'm actually just changing I've changed the implementation. I'm now going to change the specification of the API that's used to call it. Oops. Mistake. Escape. And gone. And the same thing with the YAML that I use for orders. Okay. And the one I use for inventory, So I'm doing it. I'm basically, I say, updating my APIs. I'll just redeploy them in a moment and rebind them, and then I have got I should have a new version of the APIs in in my runtime, in my control plane. Oops, what did I do there? And finally, customer orders and payment. And YAML. That's wrong. Okay, so now I do kubectl apply -f. So what I'm doing, this is the deployment. This is the way you deploy files as C or D. So you've defined your component resource definition. Yeah, another nice thing is you will learn to love, as I do anyway, YAML lint. So those of you who spend a lot of time doing writing YAMLs or checking YAMLs, this is a great way to just check the syntax of your YAML. Or at least it's one of many good ways, but I advise you to get friendly with that. So kubectl apply -f. Let's do API customer first. Customers. And okay, and it now says service instance, so it's created a new version of the customer service API. Orders. Inventory. And payment. So now I should have, if I do API list, so tell me what APIs I've actually got. You see, update instance call failed. Well, we'll see what happened in a moment. Like CTL. Apply. F. YAML. So rebind. This is probably not going to work because the API deployment itself has failed apparently at this point. Sure, why? But customer service. Okay, let's take a look and just see. This is, I'm guessing, will tell me it doesn't like that. Yeah, instance not ready. So basically, the deployment of the APIs has failed. We just have to take a look why here for a second. Just give me a moment. Okay. The plan is, so a question while I'm waiting for this to happen is, as my understanding is that we wanted to, we are sticking with Kubernetes for now. So I don't see Nomad console plans at this point. Okay. It's not working. Just give me a second here. Deprovisioning is blocked by existing credentials. Okay, it means that it looked like the binding didn't wasn't removed correctly. So let me try this again. I need to delete mythical customer binding. Okay, I'm going to back it out again. Sorry about this. It's all part of the fun and games of live demos. Seems strange. I forget to do something. Okay, so there are no bindings now, it would seem. So let's. I got the name. Yeah. So just copy this in. Mythical customer service API. So we'll try this once again just to back this out, and then I'll try to update it. But no, then we'll just leave it. But this is that's the basic principle. So basically, you create the APIs that bind to the service. You create the bindings that bind it into the control plane. Equals. Okay, so at least it recognizes the name of it now. Inventory, order. And payment should be the last one. Does everybody understand what I'm doing? I mean, just maybe you can open the mic or that sort of thing and have people talk a bit. Just
Yep.
okay.
So guys, if you have any questions, so you can use this this time to ask those questions. So I've given the presenter access to a lot of people. Yeah, you can use this forum to ask questions now.
Made a mistake again. Okay, so I'd have to examine this in detail. It looks like the updating is failing at the moment. Let's just let's go back and look at the platform anyway.
So Sean, can we look at the monitoring, because a lot of people, so I think the community use the service. Yep.
Okay, so let me just look here for a second. Okay, so you see this actually removed it from the platform. That's because the binding is not there. So I have to redeploy the APIs and rebind it into the platform. But basically, the monitoring is then simply saying, okay. So you see, it's now, of course, inactive. But you see, while it was active before I removed it, you could get this just the numbers of API calls for people who are clicking through the application, and it's showing this then in the monitoring. The only other point I'd like to add is what we've also done is I suggest you use the connected app as well as the means of actually deploying things. So when you actually, let's go back and look at this for a second. This is sort of annoying me now. CVI, API, customers. Okay, what you'd actually do is put your credentials in a connected app and define that as a secret key reference as part of the configuration. So if I actually go into the access management of the platform and say, look at my connected, I've created a connected app. Which allows then specific scopes. It allows me access to Exchange, to API Manager, and I use that then as part of my deployment for the CRD. Okay. Okay. I think I would leave it at this for now. I'd have to go back and start. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time tooling around to figure out why this update or why it's failed. Generally it should work, and that's the way of doing it. So let's go back and actually see if people got some questions. Okay. Okay, so okay, we imply the false non-Mule API without going to extra info.
I think we can start looking from question from Marius. Yes.
Okay, short question about the service mesh. This is support. Okay, No, it will stay with Kubernetes. No plans for Nomad or Consul at this point. It's also worth implementing use of small to medium-sized companies as well as enterprise. I've gotten feedback from smaller customers that they are unable to take full advantage of the majority of the product features. Okay, I'd be.
Yeah, I think this is more of a generic question. So, you know, more in terms of, you know, the cost and the sales perspective. So if so Christoph or Uli, would you be able to take this question?
You mean using MuleSoft for smaller companies?
Yes.
I mean, from a license perspective, MuleSoft has a base subscription, right? And which is, you know, needs to be consumed by an, you know, big enough amount of integration and APIs, right? That's basically the key to it. I don't see a point why also smaller companies, if they have the demands, and we have also like mid-sized companies among our customer base, should not benefit from all of the features that we do have, right? It depends really on what companies are doing, and certain companies, they are based on APIs basically, and for that it makes well sense. So that's really a license cost question and depends on the use case very much of that company. Indeed, MuleSoft is a platform solution and comes with some platform costs, right? But you cannot just upfront judge it whether that makes sense or doesn't make sense for a smaller or mid-sized company. So that really depends on the case. And there are also entry-level versions that those companies can use, which are also among our offerings. So it really, I think that needs to be assessed. So I've been talking to also several smaller customers that benefit very well from the platform.
Yeah, because I see that. Okay, so generally, a service mesh technology would assume that you have a, you know, an exit. I say service mesh in this context doesn't make sense for customers who don't basically already have. First of all, you cannot license service mesh with a standalone API management solution. You have to have a, you know, a Mule runtime solution licensed as well. Secondly, if you consider that this is a product which is designed to basically say, how can I, you know, integrate the control of a microservices environment plus a Mule application, a regular Mule environment, then the assumption is that it's going to be a relatively big development shop, or there's going to be quite a lot of development activity going on, quite a lot of APIs, quite a lot of apps being used. So to this question, does mesh require additional licensing, assuming one already has a Mule enterprise license? Yes, you have to get an enablement for service mesh. Whether it actually costs extra would depend on the type of license you've got. I would not answer that. You need to talk to one of the sales guys. Okay. Depends on the IC you have. Presenter, I appreciate the insight, everyone. Okay. Any further questions? Or just can we have, how can we handle non-Mule API span across different networks on premise through service mesh to apply the policies? You can, first of all, only manage such applications and services if you have deployed them into some form of a, if you've got them integrated into Istio and you have a basically a sort of a Kubernetes cluster. If you've got that, you can do it by integrating the, you know, by using the adapter to integrate the Kubernetes cluster It's not something I would see as on-premise. Yeah, but can you enable the mic? What if we don't have Docker and Kubernetes as of now? With the basic requirement, the fundamental requirements for this solution is that you have Kubernetes and Istio, whatever form of. So this is what we said in the chart. You need to have EKS, you need to have AKS, you need to have GKS. Okay, so in some form of Kubernetes cluster solution is something that you would have to have. How are you managing your microservices otherwise?
Mahesh, could you try allowing access for, in the pop-up blocker? I think that should help. You're already a presenter. Any other questions, guys, related to service mesh or MuleSoft in general? So currently we are in the Q&A phase. So if you have any questions related to MuleSoft in general or service mesh, feel free to ask those questions. Yes,
Yep.
Sure, Mahesh.
The answer to that is no. All services are not available for non-Mule services. Let's take a look. Say these guys have been unfortunately disabled now, but we may be able to see what's available. So the complete range of policies that you know from regular API management are not available for non. In fact, I think the list was in the. So if we go and look at, say, policies, apply new policy, that is what you get. Those are the available policies, the available standard policies for service mesh for non-Mule. So Mule has got more.
Yes, I've added the link as well, Mir Mustafa, so you can have a look there. So these are the available policies for service mesh APIs. Sean, there is another question from Mahesh.
How does service mesh can benefit us when we have the mechanism of proxy API? You don't have the entire sort of ecosystem of Exchange and Anypoint API management. Okay, hang on a second, one at a time. So there's a specific reason for the restriction. The answer to that is, of course, service mesh is a newer product, and the policies are being updated for each new release as we move forward. So we don't have still the complete catalog that we have. You can start creating custom policies. Would be the answer if you've got something that's simply not there. We simply apply the policy on non-Mule API simply through the proxy API. This wouldn't make any sense to me. Again, as I say, this is for customers who already have a an API management, an API policy solution, that you would bind it into that solution. Why would you start, doing it in two different places? Why should we go for the service mesh, which costs extra infra? Again, I repeat, this is not something which costs extra infra. You'd have that infra anyway. And you have your cloud hub, and this is not for customers who are saying, okay, I've got a microservices environment today, and I need to do something with, I now want to do something with Mule. It's for customers who have an entire Mule environment already and want to be able to integrate a microservice, non-Mule applications, non-Mule APIs into that as well. We can restrict access to public and private APIs in Cloud Hub VPC using VPC firewall rules, dedicated load balancers. How can we identify the source of call or public private API for internal communication with on-prem system? Can you elaborate? I'm not quite understanding the question.
I don't think this is a question which has anything to do with service mesh. This is basically the dedicated load balancer. When you use a dedicated load balancer, you should not put your private and public APIs on the same dedicated load balancer area. Or using the same dedicated load balancer certificate. So the dedicated load balancer can configure it in two ways, or we can configure the dedicated load balancer in two ways. We can, on one hand side, take the dedicated load balancer and load two different certificates in. One of them is for public APIs. And the private API can be self-signed. Public API certificate should be signed all the way up to a certificate authority. In that case, what happens is if you are addressing the load balancer by the virtue of the API of the certificate, you actually should be able to have two different addresses or two different URLs, one for public APIs, one for private APIs, and only use the private APIs inside your VPC and only use the public APIs coming from the outside. There is nevertheless currently an itch in there which allows you to address the public APIs with the private APIs with a public certificate that is reported and should be fixed fairly soon. If you're running a VPC and you install two dedicated load balancers, and I don't know whether the current subscription model actually gives you two dedicated load balancers per VPC, or I don't know actually anything about that at all, but that we can figure out. But normally we install two dedicated load balancers per VPC, one of them for private APIs, one for public APIs, different certificates, different URLs, and in that case you are not having the problem that you're having a sender which is where you get messed up.
Right, and just to add to Andreas, what Andreas just said. So when we talk about the on-premise system, so we can talk about two different modes. So either you're talking about systems which are existing, or your end systems which are existing in your data centers, and how the Mule API communicates, or that could be how your Mule applications existing, which are deployed in your premises through Mule standalone or through runtime fabric. So in any case, when you have a VPC and DLB, so you have to. So the best practice is to have two DLBs, one for external traffic to specifically for the experience APIs, and then for the internal traffic routing, you use internal load balancer, which only listens within the VPC. Now, from the internal load balancer, when you want to talk to your internal systems which are residing in your corporate network, you can decide, you can either create a VPN tunnel if you want to access the systems directly, or if you want to have access a Mule application which is hosted in your corporate network, then it depends which runtime platform you're using, maybe runtime fabric or maybe standalone runtime. I hope that answers your question.
And one more thing from my side, if you install on-premise, there is no dedicated load balancer. That you have to set up yourself.
Right. Okay, we have one last question from Mahesh. Can we still use the service mesh if we have Kubernetes in on-prem and not in cloud? So this is for Sean.
If you can create a binding or an adapter from your on-premise Kubernetes, and I say that what we standardly support right now are the standard cloud vendors, so AKS, EKS, and GKS. If you can create an adapter to bind from an on-premise Kubernetes environment to your control plane, then it might be possible. I haven't done it, I haven't tried it, but it's something you could investigate. So basically, just to show you very quickly, the adapter itself is nothing more than, let me just see, 1 second. Here's what the adapter is. Okay, so basically, if you can say, I'm creating, or you could create your CRD on your Kubernetes cluster, which will allow you to bind. The question is, how are you going to bind that? Okay, if you can actually get at that URL and it accepts the client ID and secret or the connected to ACT credentials, it might be possible. I'll say I haven't tried it. The question is, will you get that through your firewall? If you can access it, it might work. Standard pattern have API gateway in the DMZ, DSB runtime, and follow the pieces license. Okay, this is
take this question up. So yeah, so when we talk about the best practice, so the first recommendation we would have when it comes to having your APIs within your DMZ is, so you install a runtime plane within your DMZ. So and the best way to do it is to have let's say a runtime fabric which provides flexibility in terms of management from the control plane. The second, when we talk about having your experience APIs and the system and process APIs, so it's always recommended to have your experience APIs, or when you have your end systems residing in a DMZ. So if there is a possibility that you can use Cloud Hub for to be the first point of contact for your external consumers. So you can have your experience API deployed on Cloud Hub, which could then interact through maybe a tunnel or directly interact with applications and assets hosted in the runtime fabric or in your DMC. So, so in that case, you will have more, flexibility in terms of using the DLV, and all your traffic should be, hit directly at the DLV on the cloud layer itself when it comes to MuleSoft hosted runtimes. Okay, does that answer your question, Smita? Okay, any more questions, guys, before we move on to the next one? Okay, cool. So Sean, thank you so much for the
Sorry
insight.
about the problems here, but as I say, I'd have to look into this exactly, find out what's going on. But the basic process, I think, is understood, that you deploy the API and do the binding. And I did it this morning, and it worked. As you can see, there are different versions of the APIs in the API manager. But the usual sort of live demo effect.
Yeah, but I think the demo was really great, Sean. Yeah, I think a lot of our community members place certain orders for the T-shirts and the swag. So in that perspective, we are good to go.
All right. Yeah. Jemaya, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Sean. It was a pleasure. Okay, so let me share my screen now. Okay, can you guys see my screen, Sean? Okay. So now that we are done with Q&A, so we just have we have completed all of our topics. So now we have an interactive quiz event. So if you guys could log in to www.menti.com and add this joining code, and then we can start off with this event. So as soon as you guys go and add this joining code, just give a thumbs up in the chat, and I can then start the quiz event. And bear in mind, guys, so it's just 5 or 6 questions. So the rules of the game is, as fast as you answer the questions, the more points you get. There is no negative answers. There's no negative points. So best of luck to you all. And the top three winners will be getting MuleSoft training and certification vouchers from the community. Okay, I'm just going to bring this slide up. Okay, awesome. So I'm starting off the event. I hope everyone has joined. I'll just give 30 seconds more. Okay, so I'm releasing the questions now. All the best to you guys. Okay, here it is. So you just need to select the question, select the answer. Okay. So let's see who are at the top of the leaderboard. Okay, so guys who have used the names like Montana, Brand, the Broken, just need to give me your actual names after the meetup. So once we finish the quiz. Okay, second question. Okay. I see a lot of wrong answers here. Okay. Anyways, you still have 4 more questions to redeem yourself. Next question. Okay. So 3 more questions, guys. All the best to you. I see a lot of correct answers. Okay, so we just have 2 more questions. So yes, answer fast to get more points. Okay, so the last question, guys, is answer fast to receive more points here. Okay, so this question doesn't have a timer, so I'm just going to stop in 5 more seconds. Okay, so now when we go to the leaderboard, okay, so we have our winners. So, but we will be considering the top 3 winners, and we'll be sending them out the MuleSoft training vouchers, right? Okay, so going to my previous screen. So the people who got the top 3, who are the top 3 winners, could you just type in your email ID so I can reach out to you after the meetup? Thank you. So thanks guys for the quiz. I hope it was good and you had good experience. Now it's time for a feedback and understanding the topics that you would like to be presented at our next meetup whenever we organize the next meetup. Okay, if you could just join the same with a different code 7190246. Okay, so have you guys joined? Can you give me a thumbs up or a yes? Okay, so if you could just summarize a few words about this meetup, everyone. Awesome, great session, really valuable knowledge. Excellent. Some more, guys?
Just, Jemaya, it's me again, Sean. If anyone is interested, I'll fix the deployment.
Okay, great. Thanks for the feedback, guys. And the next, if we so I'm moving into the next one. So if we could just provide any topic which you'd like for us to present, or maybe you are interested to present in the next meetup, we could arrange for that. So if you could just give us some topics which comes to your mind, which you'd like to hear about, logging best practices, custom policies. I think Sean Mahesh has one question for you.
Yeah.
Yes, Mahesh.
Just let me show you this. This is, Ehrensache. I have to show you this. So I just I fixed the deployment, and now you can see what we wanted to do originally. We now actually have a version 3 of the API. I don't know, just sort of goofed up when doing this live, but you can see the new version has been added. I added the APIs again, and I rebound them, and now there he goes. Okay.
Right. So Sean, I'll just give you the control in a second. So I think we got the full topic. So yeah, so the runtime fabric topic we already covered in our previous meetups. So if you could just send me, contact me directly, contact the organizers directly, we could provide you the slides for the runtime fabric meetup. Okay. That's great. Thanks so much, guys, for the feedback and sharing the topics. Okay, so now that we are at the end of the meetup, so please, feel free to share, your experience. We also wanted to take a group picture, so I'm going to stop my sharing. So if everyone could just open their cameras, just turn on the cameras, I could just take a screenshot, and we could share it in LinkedIn and Facebook and any social media you want. I'm going to turn my camera on as well. Just give me a second.
Oh, maybe you get some light here. Yeah, it's kind of dark now.
Yeah, I just have to give permissions to 2 more people. Just 1 second. Okay, I think almost everyone should have access now. I think it's the last one. Oh, yes. Okay, I can still see some people who haven't turned on their camera. If you could just turn it on. Don't be shy. Okay. Ready? So just a second. Say cheese.
Jeez.
Or just say mute. Right. One more. Let me save the screenshot first. Okay. I'm going to take one more. You can just say mule or something like that.
Swag.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much, guys, for joining this meetup. It was a really good meetup. And please don't hesitate to contact me if you need anything, if you need any support, if you need any help understanding in and out about MuleSoft. Feel free to contact the organizers, and we will meet up. We'll try to organize another meetup real soon. And have a good evening, rest of the evening, and keep in touch. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.